A soldier lay in the mud of a battlefield with 3 hours left to live, and he was not afraid. He had seen men die badly, screaming, begging, clawing at the ground like it could hold them here a little longer. He had, music, promised himself he would not die like that. So, when the wound came, he did not fight it. He looked at the sky, felt the cold spreading up through his legs, and thought about the only thing that ever mattered, not how long he lived, but how well he had lived. That soldier never wrote a book. Nobody remembers his name, but the Stoics who came centuries after him would have called him a philosopher because he understood something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Truth does not knock softly. It does not wait for a good time. It shows up uninvited, usually when you are weakest, music, and it forces you to look at things you would rather ignore. The old Stoics built their entire philosophy around facing these truths early, on purpose, before life forced them on you at the worst possible moment. Zeno, Cleanthes, Chrysippus, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. Different centuries, different lives, same core teaching. The person who understands reality clearly suffers less than the person who has to be surprised by it. Today, you are getting 11 of those truths, not comforting ones, not the kind that make you feel good for 5 minutes and change nothing, the kind that rearrange how you see your life once you actually let them in. There is a difference between hearing something and letting it change you. Music, most people hear a hard truth, nod, feel a brief flicker of recognition, and then return to the exact same habits an hour later. That is not what this is for. Each truth below is meant to be tested against your own life, not just absorbed as an interesting idea. Where does this show up for you specifically? What decision would look different if you actually believed this? That question is where the real value lies, not in the words themselves. Music, some of these will sting. Good. That means they are doing their job. Truth 1, comfort is quietly making you weaker. Comfort feels like safety. It is actually the opposite. Every soft chair, every easy shortcut, every problem you avoid instead of solve, is a small transaction. You trade a little strength for a little relief, and you do not notice the price until the day life demands strength you no longer have. The old Stoics trained for hardship on purpose. Seneca kept old, plain clothes and simple food in his house, not because he was poor, but because he wanted to remind his body what it felt like to need less. He wanted discomfort to stay familiar, so it could never again be used against him as a threat. Seneca said, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Think about what that means. Fear of hardship is often worse than hardship itself. The soldier who has practiced hunger does not panic when food runs low. The person who has practiced discomfort does not panic when comfort disappears, music, but the person who has spent years avoiding every hard thing collapses the moment life stops cooperating. Look at your own life honestly. Music, how many hard conversations have you postponed? How many uncomfortable workouts have you skipped? How many difficult, music, decisions have you outsourced to someone else because making them yourself felt like too much weight? Each one of those choices felt like relief in the moment. Music, stacked together, they build a person who cannot handle friction. This is not a call to make your life miserable. It is a call, music, to stop flinching from every small hardship, because the ones who flinch from small hardship are the ones who break under big hardship. Musonius Rufus, one of the teachers who shaped Epictetus, used to tell his students to seek out some discomfort voluntarily. Cold water instead of warm. A short walk instead of a ride. A plain meal instead of an indulgent one. Music, not for punishment, for training. Muscles you do not use disappear. The same is true of your ability to endure. The brutal truth is this. The version of you that avoids everything difficult is not protecting itself. It is quietly getting weaker every single day, and it will not find out how weak until the day it desperately needs to be strong. Modern life has made this trap easier to fall into than ever before. Food arrives at the door. Entertainment plays automatically before you even finish deciding what to watch. Every friction point in daily life has been engineered away by someone trying to sell convenience. None of that is evil on its own, but stacked together across years, it quietly removes every small chance you had to practice enduring difficulty. Music, the result is a generation more comfortable than any before it and somehow more fragile under pressure than most generations that came before. Building strength back does not require extreme suffering. Music, it requires small repeated doses of friction chosen on purpose. A cold shower when a warm one was available. A walk when a ride was available. A direct conversation instead of an avoided one. Each choice is small by itself. Together, they rebuild the exact muscle that convenience has been quietly wearing down. Notice, too, that this training does not have to be extreme to work. It only has, music, to be consistent. A person who chooses one small hardship a day on purpose for a year builds a completely different relationship with discomfort than a person who has never once chosen difficulty voluntarily. The body and mind adapt to whatever they repeatedly practice. Practice ease and ease becomes fragile. Practice friction and friction becomes manageable. Comment the words below if you feel this one. I choose hard. Truth 2, nobody is coming to save you. There is a moment everyone eventually reaches. Music, the moment they realize the rescue is not coming. Nobody is going to walk in and fix the situation for them. No mentor, no parent, no lucky break, no perfect circumstance arriving right on time. This sounds harsh, but it is actually freeing once you accept it, because waiting to be rescued is a slow way to waste a life. Music, Epictetus grew up enslaved. He had every excuse in the world to wait for someone else to change his situation. Instead, he built an entire philosophy around a single idea. Some things are within your control and some things are not. And your job is to master the first category completely, music, and stop wasting energy on the second. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Waiting to be saved puts your freedom in someone else's hands. It hands your future over to luck, and luck is not loyal to anyone. This does not mean you cannot ask for help. It means you cannot build your entire plan around help arriving. The people who build real strength are the ones who assume they are on their own, and then treat any support they receive as a bonus, not a requirement. Look at how this plays out in ordinary life. Music, someone waits for the economy to improve before they start saving. Someone waits for motivation before they start training. Someone waits for the right moment before they start the business, the book, the conversation that matters. The waiting feels responsible. It is actually a hiding place. Cato the Younger, music, a man the Stoics admired for his stubborn independence, refused again and again to bend his principles for convenience, even when bending would have made his life far easier. He did not wait for Rome to become the city he wanted. He acted according to his own standard, regardless of what Rome did around him. That is the real lesson here. Stop outsourcing your responsibility to circumstances outside your control. The weather will not save you. The economy will not save you. Other people's opinions of you will not save you. Only your own decisions, repeated daily, music, build the life you actually want. Look at how often this shows up in small, quiet ways. Someone waits for a manager to finally notice their effort instead asking directly for the recognition or the raise they have earned. Someone waits for a partner to change without ever naming what needs to change. Someone waits for confidence to arrive before they take the action that would have built the confidence in the first place. In every one of these cases, the waiting feels like patience. It is actually a way of avoiding responsibility for a decision that was always theirs to make. Once you accept that nobody is coming, something strange happens. The waiting stops. You start acting like the one person whose decisions actually shape the outcome, because that is exactly what you are. This truth also changes how you handle disappointment when help does not arrive. Instead of feeling betrayed that nobody stepped in, you simply adjust and keep moving because you never built your plan on their arrival in the first place. That single shift removes an enormous amount of resentment from music, daily life. You stop keeping a silent tally of who should have helped and did not, because the entire premise of the tally depended on an expectation you have already released. Type this out if you are ready to stop waiting. I save myself. Truth 3, you will be forgotten faster than you think. This one, music, is hard to sit with, but it is true, and the Stoics wanted you to know it early rather than discover it too late. Most people who worry endlessly about their reputation are optimizing for something that has an expiration date far shorter than they imagine. Names fade. Achievements get absorbed into history and lose their sharp edges. Even people who once ran empires became footnotes within a few generations. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled most of the known world, wrote to himself constantly about how quickly fame disappears. He understood that even the emperors before him, men once treated like gods, were already half forgotten by his own time. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very soon, you will have forgotten the world, and very soon, the world will have forgotten you." Music, this is not meant to depress you. It is meant to loosen the grip that other, people's opinions have on your decisions. If you are going to be forgotten either way, then living for approval is a strange use of a short life. Music, you might as well live according to what you actually believe, since the applause will not outlast you regardless. Think about how much energy goes into managing how others see you. Music, the careful posts, the performance at work designed for an audience rather than for the task itself, the anxiety over what people will think of a decision that is really nobody's business but your own. All of that energy is being spent trying to control something that time will erase anyway. The Stoics were not nihilists. They did not believe nothing mattered. They believed the opposite. Because, music, time erases fame, what matters is not how long you are remembered, but how honestly you lived while you were here. Character outlasts memory. Music, even when memory forgets the name attached to it, stop building your life around an audience that will not remember you in 50 years. Build it around a standard you can respect while you are still the one living it. There is something quietly freeing in this for people who struggle with perfectionism. If a small mistake feels unbearable, it usually helps to zoom out. In 100 years, nobody will remember the typo, the awkward, comment, the decision that felt catastrophic at the time. The weight you assign to being seen a certain way almost always outlives its own usefulness. Once you accept how quickly the audience forgets, you can stop rehearsing your life for their approval and start living it for your own sake instead. This is also a useful filter for decision-making. When facing a choice between what looks impressive to others and what actually aligns with your own values, remember that the impressed audience has a short memory and an even shorter attention span. The decision that respects your own standard will still matter to you in 10 years. The decision that impressed a room will likely be forgotten by that same room within a week. Comment this if you are done performing for people who will forget you anyway. Music, I live for truth. This truth also reshapes how you handle old memories that still carry weight. Moments from years ago that people barely think about anymore, but that you still replay with embarrassment. If the world forgets the achievements, it has almost certainly forgotten the small mistakes, too. Music, holding on to shame for something nobody else remembers, is a strange way to spend energy that could be aimed at the life still ahead of you. Truth 4. Fairness was never promised to you. Somewhere along the way, most people absorb a quiet belief that life is supposed to be fair. Good behavior gets rewarded. Bad behavior gets punished. Effort always pays off eventually. Nobody explicitly teaches this belief, but it hides underneath a lot of daily disappointment. The Stoics rejected this belief completely, and it freed them from a huge amount of unnecessary suffering. Seneca watched good men suffer and bad men prosper constantly under a corrupt emperor, and he still built one of the calmest philosophies in history. Not because he was naive about injustice, but because he stopped expecting the universe to run on a scoreboard it never agreed to keep. Seneca said, "Nothing to my way of thinking is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." That quote sounds unrelated to fairness until you understand the context behind it. Music, Seneca was writing to a friend about how much peace comes from stopping the constant external comparison. Comparing your effort to someone else's reward is exactly the trap that fairness thinking creates. You worked hard and got little. They worked less and got more. That comparison will eat you alive if you let it. Life was never a contract that guarantees outcomes match effort. Weather does not care if your crops deserve rain. Music, illness does not check your resume before arriving. Opportunity does not always find the most qualified person first. This is not an excuse to stop trying. It is a release from the exhausting belief that you are owed something just because you behaved well. Do the right thing because it is right, not because you expect the universe to pay you back for it. The moment you stop demanding fairness from a universe that never promised it, you stop being blindsided by every disappointment life delivers. A lot of modern frustration comes from exactly this broken expectation. Someone works years at a job and gets passed over for a promotion they were sure they earned. Someone treats a friend with total loyalty and gets, music, betrayed anyway. Someone raises a family with care and still watches things go sideways despite doing everything right. Music, none of that means effort is worthless. It means effort was never a guarantee, only a factor. Once fairness stops being the standard you measure your life against, disappointment loses most of its power over you. There is also a quiet danger in fairness thinking that rarely gets discussed. It can slowly turn into bitterness if left unchecked. A running resentment against a world that never signed the contract you assumed it signed. Bitterness does not punish the world. It only punishes the person carrying it day after day, while the world continues on completely unaware of the grudge. Releasing the demand for fairness is not, music, weakness. It is one of the few genuine shortcuts to peace that actually exists. Drop this in the comments if you are letting go of the scoreboard. I expect nothing. Truth 5, music, your feelings lie to you often. Feelings arrive with total confidence. Fear feels like danger, anger feels like justice, anxiety feels like preparation. None of that confidence means the feeling is accurate. The Stoics were some of the first thinkers to separate a feeling from a fact, and that separation is one of the most useful tools they ever built. Chrysippus, who organized much of early Stoic thought into a formal system, argued that emotions come from judgments, not from events themselves. Two people can face the identical situation and have completely different emotional reactions because the emotion is built from the interpretation, not from the raw event. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions they have of things." This single idea can change how you move through an entire day. A sharp email from your boss does not automatically mean disaster. Your mind adds that meaning on top of the event. A friend not replying quickly does not automatically mean betrayal. Your mind adds that story to fill the silence. Once you notice this pattern, you can start questioning your emotional reactions instead of obeying them instantly. Ask what actually happened, separate from the story your mind attached to it. Often the raw event is far smaller than the emotional weight you gave it. This does not mean suppress your feelings. Suppression creates its own damage. It means investigate them. Treat a strong emotional reaction as information worth questioning, not as a verdict you must immediately follow. The fear that says quitting is the only option might be wrong. The anger that says cutting someone off is the only option might be wrong. Check first, react second. Music, feelings are real. They are not always accurate. Learning the difference is one of the quietest forms of power a person can develop. A simple habit can build this skill over time. When a strong emotion hits, pause before acting on it and name exactly what happened in plain neutral language separate from the interpretation your mind immediately attached to it. The email said the deadline moved up. Music, that is the event. The story your mind added that your boss thinks you are incompetent is a separate layer and often an inaccurate one. Practicing this separation daily does not eliminate emotion. It simply stops emotion from making every decision on your behalf. Over time, this habit changes the entire texture of a person's inner life. Instead of being pulled around by every emotional spike, you develop a small pause between the feeling and the action, and that pause is where all real choice actually lives. Without it, you are simply reacting. Music, with it, you are deciding. Type the words below if you are learning to question your feelings instead of obeying them blindly. I question first. Truth 6. Time does not wait for your readiness. Everyone has a version of the plan that starts later. Later, when things calm down. Later, when there is more money. Later, when confidence finally arrives. Music, time does not know about that plan, and it does not pause for it. Seneca wrote an entire letter about how carelessly people spend time compared to how carefully they guard their money. People will fight over a few coins and hand over entire years without a second thought. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." The brutal part of this truth is not, music, that time runs out. It is that most of the waste happens quietly, in small decisions nobody notices in the moment. An extra hour of scrolling, music, a conversation postponed for the 10th time, a goal delayed until circumstances feel perfect when circumstances were never going to arrange themselves for you. Readiness is a myth built to protect you from the discomfort of starting before you feel prepared. Nobody feels fully ready. The soldier does not feel fully ready before the battle. The parent does not feel fully ready before the child arrives. Readiness is manufactured through action, music, not waited for in advance. The Stoics treated each day as a complete unit, music, not a rehearsal for some future day when life would finally begin. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that the present moment is the only one he actually owned. The past was gone. The future was not guaranteed. Only the current hour was real, and it deserved full attention instead of being spent waiting for a better one. Stop treating your life like the opening credits before the real movie starts. This is the movie. It has been running the entire time you were waiting to feel ready. Most people carry a mental folder of things saved for someday. Someday they will call that old friend. Someday they will start the business. Someday they will finally rest properly instead of running on empty. That folder grows heavier every year it stays closed, and the sad part is that most of what sits inside it could have been opened years earlier if readiness had not been treated as a requirement. Pick one item out of your own someday folder today. Not the whole list. One item. Time rewards the person who starts small today far more than the person who plans big for a tomorrow that keeps sliding further away. Consider how differently your week would look if you treated every ordinary day the music way you treat the final day of a vacation, when suddenly every hour feels valuable because you know it is ending soon. That awareness does not need to wait for an actual ending. You can borrow that same urgency now, applied to an ordinary Tuesday, and use it to close the gap between the life you are planning and the life you are actually living. Music, comment this if today is the day you stop waiting. I start now. There is a practical version of this truth worth carrying into ordinary weeks. Before starting any new plan, ask what would happen if things do not go as expected. Not to prepare for failure emotionally in a fearful way, but to prepare practically, music, the way a sailor checks the weather before leaving port. Not because the sailor expects a storm, but because checking costs nothing and ignoring it can cost everything. Truth 7. Most people will not understand your path. The moment you decide to live by a higher standard than the people around you, some of them will misread it as arrogance, coldness, or rejection. This is one of the loneliest parts of growth, and almost nobody warns you about it in advance. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about the difficulty of dealing with people who would never understand his reasoning, music, his restraint, or his refusal to react the way they expected. He did not write this with bitterness. Music, he wrote it as a simple fact of living among people who were not on the same path. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Music, that line matters because it points away from convincing people and towards simply living the standard yourself. You do not need everyone to understand why you stopped drinking, why you stopped gossiping, music, why you stopped chasing approval, why you started guarding your time so carefully. Understanding was never required. Only your own consistency was required. Some relationships will thin out when you change. Some people preferred the version of you that matched their habits. This is not always malice on their part. People are often just comfortable with the familiar, and your growth disrupts that comfort without you intending to disrupt anything. The Stoics accepted this as the cost of living deliberately instead of living to be understood. Zeno of Citium built an entire school of thought that was mocked in his own time by rival philosophers, and he kept building it anyway because he was not trying to win a popularity contest. He was trying to describe reality accurately. You will not get full understanding from everyone around you, and chasing that understanding will slow down every meaningful change you try to make. Walk the path because it is right for you, not because you have convinced the whole room to walk beside you. This can be hardest inside families where old versions of you are the most deeply expected to stay in place. A relative may resist your new boundaries, your new discipline, music, your new refusal to engage in old arguments simply because those changes disrupt, music, a dynamic they had grown used to. That resistance is not always proof you are doing something wrong. Music, often, it is proof you are doing something different, and different unsettles people who preferred the predictable version of you. Respect them. Stay kind, but do not shrink back into the old pattern just to restore their comfort at the cost of your own growth. Over time, most of the people worth keeping around eventually adjust to the new version of you, or they were never the right people to keep close in the first place. Either outcome is fine. What is not fine is shrinking your own growth down to a size that keeps everyone comfortable, because that size is almost always smaller than the size you were capable of becoming. Comment below if you are walking your path even without full understanding from others. I walk alone. Truth 8. Effort without aim is wasted motion. Working hard feels virtuous. It is not automatically useful. A person can spend enormous energy every single day and still end up nowhere, simply because the effort was never aimed at anything specific. Seneca compared this to a ship without music, a destination. No wind is favorable to a ship that does not know which port it is heading toward. Seneca said, music, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. This is one of the more overlooked Stoic ideas because Stoicism gets reduced sometimes to just enduring hardship quietly. The philosophy was never only about endurance. It was also about direction. Enduring the wrong path with great discipline still leads you to the wrong destination. Look honestly at your own effort. Are you working towards something specific, or are you simply staying busy because busy feels safer than sitting still and deciding what actually matters? Busy work can become its own hiding place, music, a way to feel productive without confronting the harder question of what you are actually, music, building toward. The Stoics practiced regular reflection for exactly this reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself nightly, reviewing what he had done and whether it matched the values he claimed to hold. Not to punish himself, but to correct course before drifting too far. Without that regular check, effort tends to drift toward whatever is loudest and most urgent rather than what is actually important. Deadlines get chased. Distractions get answered. Meanwhile, the real goal, the one that actually matters 5 years from now, gets pushed aside because it never screamed loud enough to demand attention today. Aim your effort deliberately. Ask before you exhaust yourself whether this direction actually leads somewhere you want to end up. Motion without direction is just tired standing still. A useful music practice here is a short weekly check, sitting down and asking whether the last 7 days actually moved you toward the outcome you claim to want or whether they were simply filled. Not judged harshly, just music, checked honestly. If the answer keeps coming back the same distractions eating the same hours, that repetition itself is valuable information. It shows, music, exactly where effort is leaking out through the sides instead of moving forward. Music, direction does not have to be grand to be real. It can be as simple as one clear priority for the coming month held firmly enough that smaller distractions have to earn their way into your schedule instead of automatically taking it over. A ship with even a modest destination will still outperform a ship with none at all, regardless of how strong the wind happens to be. Type this if you are done confusing busy with productive. I aim with purpose. Truth 9, you cannot control what happens to you. This truth sits at the center of everything the Stoics taught, music, and it is worth hearing again in a new way because most people accept it in theory and ignore it completely in practice. You do not control the traffic, the diagnosis, the layoff, the storm, the stranger's rudeness, or the outcome of most things you care about. You control your judgment about them, your response to them, and the effort you bring afterward. That is the entire list. Epictetus opened his teaching with exactly this division because he believed almost all human suffering comes from confusing the two categories, trying to control the uncontrollable and neglecting the controllable. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take, music, the rest as it happens." Notice the second half of that line, take the rest as it happens, not fight the rest, not demand the rest bend to your preference. Take it, music, the way you take weather, the way you take the tide. This is not passivity. Music, the Stoics were not telling you to stop trying. They were telling you exactly where to place your effort, so it stops being wasted on things that will never respond to it. You cannot control whether the client says yes. You can control the quality of your proposal. You cannot control whether your body ages. Music, you can control how well you care for it today. Once you stop pouring energy into the outcome column and start pouring it entirely into the effort column, something shifts. Anxiety drops, not because the world got safer, but because you stopped fighting battles you were never equipped to win in the first place. Think about how this plays out with something as serious as a health scare. A diagnosis is not within your control. Whether you follow the treatment plan carefully, whether you rest when your body asks for rest, whether you keep a steady mind through the process, all of that is within your control. Two people can receive the same difficult news and live through it completely differently. Not because one is luckier, but because one keeps fighting the diagnosis itself, while the other channels all their energy into what can actually be influenced. The same principle applies to smaller frustrations that eat up, music, far more daily energy than a health scare ever will. Traffic, a delayed flight, a rude stranger, none of it responds to your frustration. The car ahead of you does not move faster because you are angry. The plane does not depart sooner because you are anxious.